Good morning, everyone. I hope everybody had a great Father's Day yesterday. It was such a great day in Sydney, a beautiful day to be outside. So this week, I am going to talk specifically about hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's disease. I had lots of people DMing me last week, sending me emails about what sort of testing to do and how to get that done. So I'm Ange Sinclair and I'm the Digestive Detective. So last week I did talk about testing and that in Australia, mostly our doctors will only test for TSH. And if you're in the very large range that we have, no other testing will be done. So that is why it can take around 10 years in Australia to be diagnosed with Hashimoto's disease. So my advice to you is find a nutritionist or a naturopath that can help you do a complete thyroid panel. It costs about $200. I think this test is really worth it, especially if you have some digestive issues. There's a hair caught in my glass and it keeps going into my mouth, so excuse me pulling at my face. So what testing do you need? So I think you need a TSH, a T3, which is the active form of your thyroid hormone, a T4, which is the inactive part of your thyroid, reverse T3, so it's another inactive form of the hormone, autoantibodies, and iodine also you could get done. There's a couple of others you could get done as well, but those as the basics. So today I'm going to focus just on hypothyroidism, which is a low thyroid, and Hashimoto's disease, which means there's an autoimmune component to your disease. So let's start with hypothyroidism. So hypothyroidism generally causes a slowing down of all our metabolic processes. And you will likely have symptoms like brain fog, fatigue, weight gain, or you can't lose weight like you used to be able to, cold hands and feet, hair loss, low libido, infertility for some people, depression for some people, constipation, poor concentration, decreased heart rate and decreased body temperature. They're all the biggest ones. So subclinical hypothyroidism is common as well. It's hard to say that. So this is where your TSH may be in the normal range, but you're experiencing some of these symptoms. And this is common due to missing nutrients that we have in our diet. Iodine once used to come in the old milk bottles. They used to wash them out with the milk bottles, but now they don't do that so much. So Hashimoto's disease is not actually a thyroid problem. It's more of a immune system problem. So essentially Hashimoto's and Graves' disease, which we will talk about next week, is where our immune system mistakenly attacks their own cells. So this can happen to a few reasons. So one, excessive toxin intake into our body. And I would like to also say gluten in this. Gluten's a really big starter for thyroid disease. So the immune system basically malfunctions and attacks our thyroid. So your thyroid then underproduces the hormones, and then this slows down our metabolic processes. So as with any autoimmune condition, we need to treat the gut. 80% of our immune system is in our gut. So generally in these circumstances, we do tend to have leaky gut, and the food particles, the toxins, the microbes, all those sorts of things get blown out into our bloodstream. Then our immune system attacks these molecules and then your body's own tissues because it gets confused, essentially. So before I talked about gluten in this process, so gluten, with thyroid disease, gluten actually absolutely plays a role. So it produces a protein called zonulin, and zonulin opens up those tight junctions in our gut, because our tight junctions, I should be able to tip that up and pour water through there, and that's our intestinal lining, and water shouldn't go through. But what happens when we have zonulin and gluten, for everybody, whether you've got a good gut or bad, your tight junctions, they open up a little bit, and they stay open for about 3 hours. And so when they stay open, the food particles we eat, the toxins that come into our body, they get all blown out into the bloodstream. And this initiates the turn-on switch for our immune systems to say, hey, these things aren't supposed to be here. So gluten also has a really similar structure to our thyroid. So your immune system gets really confused and attacks your thyroid instead. So this is why one of the reasons when people have autoimmune thyroid conditions or autoimmune conditions in general, I get them to go off gluten because it's called molecular mimicry, and it can really get the body confused. So you're best off not having it. So some of the other things in Hashimoto's and in our thyroid as well, nutrients that we need are iodine. So iodine is a nutrient that should be looked at with all thyroid conditions, because iodine and tyrosine, another nutrient, are the building blocks of our thyroid hormones. So without enough iodine, our thyroid can't produce enough hormones. And unfortunately, many people are not eating iodized salt, or they're not eating fish or iodine containing foods, sea vegetables, seaweeds, those sorts of things. So there is a lack of iodine in our diets in general. The other nutrient that I find lacking too is selenium. And this selenium deficiency definitely impacts our thyroid. It helps us, our thyroid, convert our inactive T4 hormone into the active T3 hormone. So it also lowers our antibodies if we get Hashimoto's or Graves. So everyday toxins like mercury and bromide deplace iodine in our body. So which means we cannot absorb iodine as we need for our thyroid. So one of the things that I find commonly is a big source of these toxins is tap water. Most people don't have filtered water at home. I would suggest you do that, because it's a really good place to start filtering out those chemicals that you're having. So tap water is a really common source because it's got lots of chemicals that displace our thyroid essentially. So mercury is in food, it's in pesticides, it's in cosmetics, it comes from large fish, it comes from tin fish, vaccines and dental fillings. They're all places that you'll find mercury. So you also need to make sure that your detox pathways are open. So for example, if you're constipated, you can't hope to excrete these things from your body. So you need to make sure that pathway is working. Some of the other things that is an underlying driver for thyroid is underlying viruses or pathogens. And these could be the driver of our thyroid condition. So sometimes we don't even know we've had them. Things like Epstein-Barr virus, cytomegalovirus, all those sorts of things. So when you get a thyroid test, it might be worth getting an assessment of all those conditions as well. And lastly, the biggest one for me that I see over and over, which is a really big driver of hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's disease, and this was probably my one for my Hashimoto's, is stress. So stress impacts our thyroid. When we are stressed, our adrenals pump out cortisol and the body slows down its production of our thyroid hormones until things get back to normal. And normally when we're supposed to have stress, you have the stress, you deal with the stress, you go back to normal. But what's happening with us now, we're in this constant state of chronic stress. Our thyroid stays really slow and has trouble getting these its inactive thyroid hormones to become active. And I do really see this as a big cause. And what happens with our adrenals, because they're pumping out all the time, our adrenals get fatigued as well, and then our thyroid can't do what it's supposed to do. So I always see people who have an autoimmune thyroid condition have had long periods of stress in their life. So I think that's really important to remember. So that wraps us up for today. So if you have signed up for my newsletter, I will talk about foods that will help when it comes to thyroid, hypothyroid, and Hashimoto's on Friday. So if you have a thyroid condition or a thyroid issue, or you want a proper assessment, book in for a free 15-minute consult. For those of you on Facebook, the link is above in the title section. For those of you on Instagram, it is in the bio. And for those of you on LinkedIn, it's actually in the comments. So have a fabulous day, people, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.